I'm going to start with a story that some of you know about me. There'll be parts of it that you don't know. But the reason is this, is that if we're going to talk about friendship as the key to life, we have to talk about friendship in the midst of death. If we're going to talk about friendship as the key to life, we got to talk about friendship in the midst of death. As this semester began, my brother died. Yeah. And I felt alone. The reason I felt alone is that I was supposed to be with many of you on something we call pre-retreat, where we gather back together. We reconnect with God, we reconnect with each other, and we reconnect with our mission here on campus. But I wasn't with you. The reason I felt alone is that I was supposed to be with my family there. I was supposed to be with those three wonderful children, and they are wonderful. And that's mainly because of my wife and not because of me, especially the adorable cuteness. And as you can tell, I'm not very fancy. And I was supposed to be with them, or I wanted to be with them. But they were where they were supposed to be. They were at home. They were with my in-laws. And they were enjoying the fellowship of family. You were where you were supposed to be. Many of you on that pre-retreat were reconnecting with God. You were reconnecting with your friends, and you were reconnecting with the mission that we have here on this campus. And so I didn't feel abandoned by you. I felt abandoned by God. Because when I was there, when I oversaw the funeral of my brother, and I organized the whole thing, that night that I went home, I was supposed to be speaking to you about being renewed in worship. And usually when I come home, I open the door and those three adorable kids scream, "Daddy! Daddy! Daddy!" I get a hero's welcome every time I come home. And it's amazing. Went back to a house in Birmingham, Alabama, and opened the door, and it was just silence. Just darkness. And in that moment, I felt utterly alone. Abandoned by God. Have you ever felt alone like that? It could be for a lot of reasons. It could be for reasons similar to mine, the death of a family member. As you're on this campus, you could feel alone because there's something going on at home that you just haven't told anybody, and you're struggling with something. You don't feel like anybody's going to understand. And so as you walk around this campus with 5,200 students, you feel utterly alone. It could be because of a bad grade on a midterm. It could be just, I feel alone because I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if I can do what God's called me to do in whatever area of life that you're in. You could be in this room with a couple of hundred people, and you sit here and you feel utterly alone. The reason that friendship is the key to life is it is the answer to what satisfies our loneliness. The good news is that the Bible is not unacquainted with loneliness. If you were to read the creation story of the Bible, you would find that God says over and over and over again in Genesis chapter 1 that it was good, that it was good. And then he creates humanity together, and he says it is very good. When we get a different angle on the creation story in Genesis 2, something unique happens there. There, the first time, God says something wasn't good. The mission of humanity that he has given him is to rule and subdue the earth and have dominion over the world. Take that Garden of Eden-like experience and spread it to the ends of the earth. Be fruitful and multiply and rule over everything. And the reason that he said it's not good, or the thing that he said that wasn't good, he said it's not good for man to be alone. God understands loneliness. He understands that it's not good, and he gives us the gift of friendship in creation. We were made for each other. In order to understand what it means that man was being alone and that it's not good, Christopher Wright, I think, sums it up well in a quote that should appear here. Given that he's created man in his image and he's created for a particular purpose, the project God now embarks on is not to find a companion, this is Adam, to stop him feeling lonely, but to find a helper to stand alongside him and this huge task laid upon him as the servant, keeper, filler, subduer, and ruler of all creation. The man does not just need company, he needs help. Male and female are necessary not only for mutual relationship in which they will reflect God, but also for mutual help in carrying out the creation mandate entrusted to humanity. This is friendship. You don't simply need companionship. You don't simply need company. I didn't simply need a companion or company when I felt alone. I needed help to fulfill God's mission and to stay on task. When you read through the Bible, God is faithful to provide people friends in the midst of some of the darkest circumstances, even in the midst of death. When you go through some of the greatest characters in the Bible and the great things that they did, they never did it without a friend. Think of the great King David, right? He's pursued by Saul, who is currently the king of Israel, and they pursue his life. His family turns on him, and they pursue him to kill him. And yet, what did God provide for David? One friend that covenanted with him and said, I will never leave you. That's, I think, why David made it. He wasn't alone. He needed a friend to keep him on mission. Think of the great prophet Elijah. What is his concern as the queen is there to pursue him and kill him? His concern when he meets God on a mountain is he essentially says, why am I alone? And God says, don't worry. You got 7,000 friends. Think of the great prophet Jeremiah as he is going into exile and proclaiming truth to a king and a people that simply will not believe. Can you imagine showing up to God and you're like, God, what do you want me to do? Well, I want you to preach the truth. Great. It's good. What's going to happen? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Judgment's going to come on the people that you're preaching to, and guess what? You're going to go with them into exile. Your home will be taken from you. And you will have no one except God provides for Jeremiah one man in the form of Baruch, who is faithful to him. And I think Jeremiah made it because he had a friend. What mission are you on for which you need a friend? Let me give you some examples of the missions that we could be on this campus. If you're on a mission of racial reconciliation, whether you are black, white, Asian, or some other ethnicity or race, let me tell you what your friend will not say if you're on the front lines of that. It's too hard. The differences are irreconcilable. You just need to give up. Your friend will also just go and pray and it'll be fine. If your mission is engaging the sexual injustice on this campus in which 1 in 6 women will be sexually assaulted by the time that they graduate, let me tell you what a friend will not say. It's not your issue. Let me tell you what a friend will not say. It's just too hard, just boys will be boys. And it's just human nature. A friend will not say that. If your mission is to keep academic integrity and have Christianity be academically viable at Princeton, I heard that there's something that happens like that here. If that's what you do when you are challenged by that, your friend will not say, just do theology but not history. Just do faith, you're not an academic. What would a friend say in those moments? A friend that is there, not just to provide you company, but to keep you on mission. Tell you exactly what he would say in the terms of this injustice that is happening. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. And he would say, keep going, even if you feel like this is not your issue, because an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And then they would walk with you in that and join you in the mission. In the midst of feeling alone, as we battle some of the greatest injustices on this campus, you will question your faith. And as you doubt and as you wrestle with that, whether that challenge is personal, whether it's with friends, or whether it's academic, you will doubt and your faith will be challenged and you will feel alone because you think you're the only one going through it. Let me tell you what a friend doesn't say in that instance. Everybody has to find their own path. If this is too hard, choose something else. And a friend will also not say, just go pray by yourself and God will help you. Rather, just like we are studying in the book of Hebrews, that friend will grab you and they will say, let us, with confidence, draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace for what? To help in our time of need. God understands loneliness, and he gives the gift of friendship in order to keep us on mission. The reason that we know that we have friendship secured for us as a gift from God is because there is one man who was 100% abandoned by God and his friends, and therefore by God. And his name was Jesus. Jesus says something interesting from the cross that has puzzled many, many people. And I think, as I thought through friendship, this is the solution. Jesus, God in the flesh, sitting on the cross, says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Theologians have wondered what is the case here. But he's quoting Psalm 22. And you know what Psalm 22 describes? Not just a man who is suffering, not just a person who is in hard times. It is a person who is suffering in hard times alone. Verse 11 in that says, as he prays to God, he says, be near to me. Very simply, it's so simple. Be near to me. Trouble is near, and there is none to help. Part of the suffering on the cross, maybe even a majority of it, as God cries out this, as Jesus cries this out to his Father, isn't the physical pain that he felt, maybe not even the spiritual pain, but it was the fact that he suffered, and he suffered utterly alone. Think about Jesus' life. The friends, the 12 friends that were entrusted to him, where were they when he was going to the cross? When he gathered them and he knew that his time was coming to suffer, and he said, pray for me, and I'm going to go over here. What did they do? They fell asleep. How did Jesus suffer in the wilderness when Satan showed up to him and tempted him? Who was with him? No one. He was alone. His friends didn't understand his mission so much that when Peter decides to give him advice about what he should do on his mission as the Messiah, Jesus has to look at one of his most trusted friends and say, get behind me, Satan. Jesus lived a life of complete loneliness. And the cross is the cross of loneliness. Before I go on, let me say this now. If you believe what the world tells you, what this campus tells you, and perhaps what some of your so-called friends tell you, that your faith is only true faith if you can walk it alone, that is a lie. Jesus bore the cross of loneliness, and you may have a cross to bear, but it is not loneliness. If you are bearing that cross, I can guarantee you that there is a friend who is here that can bear your burden with you. Jesus is the only one who has borne the cross of loneliness. Why would I say that? Because Psalm 22 continues, and the psalmist continues to cry out to God. And I think we should understand, as the Gospels make clear, that the suffering of Jesus is patterned after really Psalm 22. Maybe Psalm 22 is patterned after the suffering of Jesus. Who's to say? But as the psalm continues, verse 21 comes up and he says, save me from the mouth of the lion. And then the next verse it says, you have saved me. And what follows is he is no longer alone. The salvation of God that shows up in Psalm 22 is that God satisfies the psalmist's loneliness. He doesn't take away the suffering and the pain. He doesn't take away the hardship of the mission. He provides him with friends to continue the mission. If you are engaged in something that is hard, this is what you have to realize. Don't stop the mission. Get some friends. Because what I think that means is that after he says, save me, and he delivers him, It says that now I will tell your name to my brothers, plural. And I will praise you in the midst of the congregation. One who is lonely and abandoned by God now experiences brotherhood and friendship in the midst of a congregation. In the same way that in the creation, God looked at Adam and he says, it is not good for man to be alone. He looked at Jesus in the grave and said, it is not good that Jesus be alone. Because God may have abandoned him and have forsaken him on the cross, but he did not abandon him to the grave and death. And in that, when he rises from the dead, guess who his brothers and sisters are? That God gives to Jesus as a gift to proclaim the praiseworthiness and the glory of God. It is you and it is I. We are brothers and sisters with Christ. We are the congregation in the midst of which Jesus praises his Father because of the resurrection. If you're praying Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? And if you feel verse 11 of that chapter, be near to me because trouble is near and there is none to help. Continue reading the psalm. Because in the resurrection of Jesus, he has given you friendship. Your friends are the gift of Jesus in his resurrection. So if you want to experience resurrection life in the midst of death, you need a friend who's not just going to provide you company, but will keep you on mission. So I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was alone. Silence, darkness, no one around. How was I to satisfy my loneliness? Just phone a friend. And it wasn't just friends that I could hang out with. I called Jake Collins, one of the most loyal men that I know, for two reasons. One, I knew he would answer the phone. He's old enough to where texting isn't his thing. I knew he would answer the phone because I knew that he knew that I was there and he couldn't be at my brother's funeral. And I knew that he just wanted to talk to me, to make sure that I was okay. And so I met him and his wife. He had only been married for a year, and we had dinner together. But we didn't just talk. We didn't just have food together. We talked about their young marriage. They had just celebrated their first year of marriage, and I was a groomsman in his wedding. So I was a witness to this beautiful covenant. And so in that meal that we shared together, it wasn't just about company. It was to keep Jake and his wife on mission. First year of marriage can be hard. And so in the midst of that pain and death, I was able to serve and just be a friend. And in turn, he freshly engaged me. It gave me a fresh love for my wife and for my family. Reminded me what marriage is about. He was a friend who kept me on mission. Afterwards, I called a couple other friends from college who were still in the Birmingham area. And we got a couple drinks, just water, of course, maybe. Got crazy with a little Coke with a slice of lime. President's Council, that's what I drank. And we could have talked about anything, man. We had crazy times in college. I mean, all very wholesome, of course. Stories to this day that are still told on that campus. We're legends. In our own minds, for sure. We had a lot of good times in the past. We could have talked about a lot of things. We could have talked about that when my friend and I, it was raining outside and we were coming down this hill and he was going to take a left turn and he had a pickup truck because it is Alabama after all, except it was just a Chevy S10. It wasn't this Ford, like big Ford F350 or something like that. You guys probably don't even know what those things are. But this one is very small, it's very light, and he was going to take a sharp left turn and the road was that wet and we were just headed toward that turn. I go, dude, you probably need to slow down. You should really slow down. Dude, Yep, all right, we're turning, and we are spinning. And we're just spinning in the road. We do 3 full turns, we stop. We just looked at each other, just put it in reverse, straighten up, and there we go. I was like, okay. That's how we do that right there. And there are times like that were funny, that you get together with old friends like, hey, remember when that happened? And that's not what we did. Those two guys are in ministry as well. Guys in a local church, just a fledgling church that he took over from a pastor that didn't proclaim the gospel at all. 15 people, and he's trying to bring that thing back to life just by proclaiming Jesus, and that's hard. And every day he just wants to quit. And so I had the opportunity to sit down with him and keep him on mission. Say what God has called you to is simply to be faithful and continue to proclaim the gospel. My other friend had struggled with an illness, and he teaches Bible at a local school. And he's just struggling day after day, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The opportunity to help him to stay faithful, that God does love him and cares and sees. And then for them to just comfort me, because I was just honest with them. I'm lonely, don't know what I'm going to do. I just don't feel safe with myself. And they just encouraged me and built me up and said, continue on your mission. That's what true friendship does. It wasn't for me just about to get together and have company with old friends. It was about an opportunity in the midst of death to bring life out of that situation, to keep me on mission. So when we talk about friendship as the key to life, we have to talk about friendship in the midst of death. And there is no doubt in my mind that as I experienced the death of my brother and I felt alone, the only thing that brought me back to life, kept me on mission for God, was a friend. If you don't have that friend right now, you don't think that you know that friend, he or she is here. And if you don't think that you're being that friend, the death and resurrection of Jesus says that it's possible. You need to be that friend for someone else and be willing to receive that love from someone else. Perhaps the hardest part for you in that is to actually receive true friendship from someone else. Because you have to admit that you just don't need company. You need help. And so whatever you're dealing with, God's well acquainted with loneliness. Jesus is well acquainted with loneliness. Because in that text that I quoted earlier, let us with confidence then draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Just before that it says, for we have a high priest who is able to sympathize with us in our weaknesses. And so we draw near to him because he knows loneliness. And he knows it like nobody else has. And he resurrected from the dead so that you don't have to walk as a lonely man or woman. It's interesting that Paul, writing to the church in Galatia, there's a lot of strife and argumentation there. This gift of friendship is, I think, why Paul says that what it means to fulfill the law of Christ is to bear the burdens of your brothers and sisters. To fulfill the mission of an abandoned, alone Messiah is to gather with the friends that he purchased for you and to carry each other's burdens. So I call you tonight, as we're about to draw near to God in worship, so worship team, come up here. Let us draw near to God now. For you have a friendship with God through Christ that purchases for you friends that bring resurrection life in the midst of loneliness, to keep you on mission.